Benz. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going?
We are going another episode of HardFoul Radio. This is the show that values time and puts God first. Appreciate y'all for joining in. It is a wonderful Thursday. Appreciate you. So let's get started. Excuse me. So there's a lot of consensus in the NBA playoffs, specifically with the Boston Celtics, that the Celtics are the best team in the playoffs and by all accounts should be the team that wins and goes back-to-back finals. And I said this during my predictions, breaking down the bracket. Yes, despite that I have the Bucks going to the finals because of my belief in Giannis as an all-time great player, I've said the Celtics are the best team. They should be the team that wins. They should just, even against Giannis, even against the Bucks, they should just hit 30, 40 threes multiple times, or 20-plus threes, and just blow them out several times a game, and they should win that series. Here's the problem, though, and this is where I think the Celtics need to be worried. If you are the Boston Celtics, and you are the overwhelming favorite, you know what position that puts you in? The same position the Bucks were in a few years ago. Giannis coming off the 50-point game in Game 7 to beat the Suns, and they were the overwhelming favorite, and then lost in the second round the following year. The same position that Jokic and the Nuggets were in last year when they were the overwhelming favorites when they were the defending champions and were supposed to win it again. These teams that we feel like should be overwhelming favorites, these teams that we feel like should absolutely win the title, there's a reason they all don't. And I'm not in here to tell you what's wrong with the Celtics. I'm not in here to tell you why I think they're not obviously a great team. But what I am here to tell you is why they should be extremely cautious, even though they are the overwhelming favorite by most accounts, by sports books, by fans, by media, to repeat as NBA champions. If you are the Celtics, the way you play inherently is going to create certain series and certain styles of games. Tony was talking about this where he said they're not a team that is really designed to sweep through any particular series, and that's because they shoot so many threes that you're just going to have a game where the Celtics go to only hit 10 to 13 threes, and they shoot 40 to 50 of them, and they just have an off night, and inherently the other team is going to have a chance to be in that game, if not win that game, due to the three-point shooting. So your own style becomes volatile. Similar to Jokic on the Nuggets, Giannis with the Bucks. If they didn't have these all-time great games or these all-time great series, the teams were clearly not championship built as an entirety of a roster. They were designed around these all-time great players who did not perform up to the standard that they needed to win a title. So inherently, the Celtics could very easily not win a game or even not win a series just due to the style of basketball that they play. Secondly, if you are the Celtics, again, Jason Tatum, I think, is a fantastic player. I think he's a top 5 player. And I think if he were to win this and he gets back-to-back titles, we're going to have some real conversations of, is he a top 2 player? Is he a top 3 player if he gets back-to-back titles? But if you're only considered that high because of your accomplishments, I know it's going to sound weird, but if you were to be considered that high because of your accomplishments, but we don't necessarily look at you just as from pure talent or raw basketball ability, again, I don't think they're going to have, if they play the Bucks, I don't think they have the best player in that series. And a lot of people feel like if they were against potential final matchups, if they were to play Denver, Jokic is the best player in that series. I don't think Denver can get to the finals. If they were to play the Thunder, I do think there's going to be a lot of people who argue SGA is the best player in that series. And I would actually push back somewhat on that. I think Tatum is better than SGA, but you're going to have people that argue SGA is better than Tatum right now. And if you were to even play a very trendy pick, either the trendy pick of the Clippers, who I have in the Western Conference Finals, if Kawhi has a great run, there's going to be people that will tell you that playoff Kawhi is better than a playoff Jason Tatum. And the other really trendy pick, the Warriors, are they going to say they're better than Steph? So you're not going to have this all-time dominant player who's just going crazy and that leads you to a title. You're going to lose games just inherently just due to the nature of the way you play offense and the way you play basketball. So if you're the Celtics, and the Celtics are the best team, and I know this is going to sound crazy, and it always does, but it's just the way playoff basketball works. They are the best team. And over the course of a regular season, and I think this is why we don't look at the Thunder or the Cavs in the same light. We give the Celtics the respect because they're the defending champions. But the Thunder and Cavs, we understand, are great teams. But their top end are not these all-time top-end teams. Like, we're going to discuss a little bit more tomorrow about the Thunder and this all-time team that they should be because they have 68 wins. But when we think of all-time teams, we think of Kobe, Shaq, Lakers. We think of LeBron, Big Three with the Heat. We think of Steph, KD, Clay, like these teams that have multiple Hall of Famers, multiple all-time great guys, legends. The Cavs and Thunder definitely don't have that. And the Celtics, we would only really give them that status if they were to continue winning. So is Peyton Pritchard going to be the guy in the playoffs again? Is Kristaps going to be as dependable as he was last year in the playoffs? Is someone like Al Horford going to continue to be able to, at his advanced age, continue to play big in big moments? So again, and I know it sounds crazy because the Celtics, again, are the overwhelming favorites to win the title. And they should be. If you're just doing this on a pure betting perspective, who should be the favorites? They absolutely should be. But so were the Nuggets. So were the Bucks. Just because you are the overwhelming favorite does not mean you are guaranteed to win it. So if I'm the Celtics, proceed with a little bit of caution. Just saying. Proceed with a little bit of caution. A little caution never hurt anybody. Moving on to a trendy pick that I keep going after because I'm trying to make sense of it in my head, and so maybe I just got to talk it out enough where I can understand where everybody else's mind is at. The Warriors and Rockets are going to play, and there's a lot of people have been saying this. Oh, the Warriors might have saved their season because they got rest, and now they get to play Houston, and Houston's too young, and the Warriors are going to take advantage of them because they've got all this championship experience, and now they're going to be rested. Look, one of the hardest things for any sports fan, I feel like, to do is admit when something is over. And this doesn't even have to be like if you root for an all-time team or not. If you just root for a good team or a handful of good players, admitting when they're no longer as good as they've been is tough. It is. It's just tough. The Warriors, who I feel like are getting a lot of love because we still see these players who were part of the dynasty, and we still see these moments. We see Steph hit the 50-point game, the 40-point game. Still see Steph hit big shots in the play-in game. And we just think, oh, okay, cool, they can still do it. The reality is they can't. Ask yourself, take away their resumes, which are obviously going to be the Warriors' resumes, just Steph and Draymond alone, are going to be better than anyone in the NBA besides LeBron. What do they do better than Houston? because it's not defense. And the Warriors are a good defensive team, not a great defensive team. But Draymond, even though I don't think he should win Defensive Player of the Year, they've clearly been a better defensive team, him and Jimmy, these last 30 games. But they're not a better defense than the Rockets. They shoot better than the Rockets. I mean, Steph does on any given night, but we've also seen Steph have 4 and 5 point games. We saw Steph struggle against this same Houston team, which is one of his 4 point games. So they're not necessarily better as a whole, a better shooting team than the Rockets. They don't have more depth than Houston. And there's a really strong argument they're not even going to have the best player in terms of productivity every night against the Rockets. Look, Steph is amazing. We love Steph. He's one of the 10 to 12 greatest players ever. He has given us moments that we just all have in the back of our heads. And he has done what he's done for the NBA. Can't take that away from him. Look how the Warriors dealt with Zach Edey the other night. Zach Edey, who is maybe was going to turn into a really good player, and I get it. He's 7'4", 7'3", big dude, but he's not that kind of player yet. But he looked it against the Warriors because they are really, really small. And guess who is a really good player already? A guy who's going to get All-NBA votes. Sengun on the Rockets is going to tear the Warriors up. And when we look back at this series, and again, I think the Rockets are going to win this in 5. We're going to look back on this series and go, oh, and now we don't have a playoff Sengun moment. I know playoff Jimmy, that's a lot of Warriors fans, a lot of people that pick the Warriors. That's a large part of the reasoning is Jimmy's ability to elevate himself in the postseason. Sengun has never made the playoffs before, so we don't have that to go off of in terms of facts. But who's going to stop him? Because it's not going to be Draymond. And they don't have the size to deal with him. And he's very point center-ish. Like, because Jokic exists, obviously everybody else is going to get downplayed to a certain degree. But he's point center-ish. The Warriors don't have a one-on-one matchup for him. The Warriors don't have a team matchup for him. If Zach Edey was killing him, imagine what he's going to do. And again, you've got Thompson to put on Steph. Jimmy is, well, Jimmy scores more in the playoffs. He's going to be able to, the physicality and going up against a Dillon Brooks is definitely going to be a deterrent. Like, just name, and even you want to go one step further, look at coaching. And I know Steve Kerr's resume is clearly better than Ime Udoka's. But Kerr the last couple of years versus Udoka the last couple of years, who's better? Like, I get it. The Warriors have an all-time resume. Steph's an all-time player. We really like them. And it's really hard for us to admit when that run is just finally over. But what do they do better than Houston? It's not defense. It's not shooting. It's not being more physical. It's not depth. At the high end, how your player performs, Sengun, I think, is going to have a better matchup against the Warriors than Steph will against the Rockets. So Sengun is probably going to be the best in terms of his stats and his numbers and his impact. What does Golden State do better than Houston? And I know Houston's young, but I think they're just flat out better coaching, shooting, defense, physicality. I think they check every single box. We just don't want to admit it yet. They're young. That's all you got. When we come back, a little bit of Team Thursday stuff to go through, as well as the team in baseball that is just the power rankings do not apply. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily. And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody for tuning in today. So it is Thursday, which means a little bit of Team Thursday. Man, sometimes talking about the Pelicans gets depressing. So the Pelicans hired, I got two quick stories here with the Pels. The first off is they hired Joe Dumars, who the idea is he is going to bring some kind of accountability to the organization. He obviously had a great run those early years in Detroit, building what he did, that 04 team. He gets a lot of credit for. He's also a Louisiana native. And so there's a lot of things that you could say. It's hard to say it's a great hire, but I definitively don't think it's a bad hire. Now, there's some question marks here because there's a relationship, not just with Louisiana, but there's a relationship with Gail Benson, the owner of the Pelicans, and a lot of the higher-ups in that organization. And so some people feel like they just moved on from David Griffin to hire their friend. And because she also owns the Saints and her late husband owned both the Saints and the Pelicans, there is some people who are worried that this was just a friendly family hire, and that should there be actual concern here, because was this legitimate? Now, again, happy to see, let me rephrase this. Joe Dumars is qualified to have this kind of a job because he has prior success. So I don't want to say, even if he got it through some kind of favor or friendly gesture, fine. This is different than if you just hire someone with no experience because they're your friend. So again, I don't think you can say this is a bad hire, but it is going to be hard to say it's a great hire, especially if what is the strength of Joe Dumars, right? Now, none of us are that in the weeds where we know, what is the strength of a great president of basketball operations. We know the guys who are good at it because they have the success to follow. And you can look at, okay, did they win championships? How many All-Stars did they draft, et cetera, et cetera. There's some hard facts we can look at. And Joe has that at the beginning of his tenure in Detroit. He also has the negative end, which is how it ended in Detroit, which is where he went from he could do no wrong, he essentially turned into he could do no right. And that is a little concerning. The other thing here is they brought up the point of, what are you going to do with Zion? And there was some immediate reports that came out, and Pel fans, don't listen to the reports because they've been saying these same reports for the last 5 to 6 years. Not saying it can't happen. I just think it's unlikely because we've had these same reports, again, for the last half decade, which is it was immediately reported, he is going to try to trade Zion. Like, Pelicans ownership is going to say, hey, find the best deal you can get for him and get him out of town. I think it makes no sense to trade both B.I. and Zion in the same offseason or the same season/offseason. And because he's always been involved in these kind of trade rumors, I don't put a lot of stock into it. But if they were to do it, I also wouldn't be terribly surprised. But the other report is he's going to bring accountability, and he is going to get Zion, who some people think has, and I think Zion's gotten himself in a great shape, and I think a lot of the reporting on Zion is a bunch of bull. But there was the report, and factual, that Zion was penalized and sat out a game because he was constantly late to the team playing. That happened. There's something there. There's some validity. I just don't put a ton of stock into it. Now, that being said, if Joe is going to attempt to do that, how is he going to be much different than Willie Green, who supposedly, the report came out yesterday, lost the locker room because he called him soft after a franchise record of 40-point losses, essentially implying that, hey, guys, you can't just give up on every game because we're down. Like, losing these games, yeah, they suck, but we gotta fight back. If that's what made you lose the locker room, I don't know if Willie is the ultimate X's and O's guy. I'm not in the weeds like that as far as I'm not going to try to act like I could do what an NBA coach does. But if that's the statement that lost the locker room, there's a lot more issues in New Orleans than anybody really wants to talk about. If I can't look at you guys and go, hey, man, we're playing like some shit. We're playing soft. We're getting our ass kicked. Can you fight back a little bit? Because here's the reality with Willie Green is, and I like Willie, if Willie gets, now I don't think Willie should be brought back, but that's more so because I believe with Malone and Jenkins both available, I think you go get one of them who are more proven coaches, have accomplished more. But Willie, if you can't take that and you're going to try to bring in Joe Dumars and potentially a Mike Malone, are we not going to be accountable then? Because Mike Malone's a hard ass. Mike Malone's going to be the guy who is, yelling at his players, being like, hey, get your shit together. So if that's what turned them off from Willie Green, I can only imagine what Michael Malone would ensue. Michael Malone would have mutiny, literal mutiny. So, and then Willie's got to know too, and I think he did, I'm going to call these guys soft. And certain words, soft, stuff like that, is going to turn some players off. But you've also got to know if you have to use that, you're at a point that if this doesn't work, I'm probably fired anyway. So fuck it. That's like, what else is he supposed to do? Like, I'm probably fired anyway. So I'm going to try to do this one galvanizing thing, and it's either going to work or it doesn't. So again, I'm not the X's and O's guys. I don't know if Willie Green was a great X's and O's guys. I know Willie Green got to the playoffs twice with this team, and I know he never really had a quote-unquote fair chance because B.I. and Zion never really did get on the same page as far as being healthy. But look, man, a lot of issues in New Orleans right now. But shout out to Joe Dumars. We'll see if it works. Second story is Broncos over/under set at 9.5. And there's a lot of people who are slamming this under 9.5 for Denver. And I'm going to go specifically at someone who is just a Bronco hater. And just lied on national TV yesterday. So Nick Wright said, slam the under for the Denver Broncos. That's his favorite under. And he says, I defended it by I was the one guy who said my favorite over last year were the Broncos. And I'm going to post the clip because he's literally just lying. At no point last year was he like, oh yeah, Denver's going to be better than what they're projected. He slammed the Bo Nix pick. He slammed Sean Payton. He literally just went on national TV and lied. And I'm going to post the clip and I'm going to throw it up on the HardFoul Twitter later. Literally just blatantly lied. And I like first things first. I like the show. Nick, I'm a little indifferent on, but I like the chemistry of the show. I like the way they do it, the style of the show. It's really fun. It's an enjoyable watch in the afternoon. Like, props to the show. But there's a lot of people that are slamming the under on Denver 9.5, and a lot of people that are essentially calling it they're acknowledging last year or attempting to acknowledge or turn last year into a fluky season. And there's a lot of comparisons being made right now of what Bo did as a rookie and what Mac Jones did as a rookie. A, go look at their stats. B, go look at the style of play they had. Bo was way more athletic than Mac as a rookie. Bo made better deep throws than Mac as a rookie. Bo was third in the league or fourth in the league in air passing yards and yards downfield for a guy that was criticized for being that slant merchant or a guy who couldn't get the ball down the field. The things that Mac proved he could never really fix and was his issue just flat out were not an issue for Bo as a rookie. Bo has an offensive line that was top 3. If you take out Detroit and Philly, who I think are clearly the two best offensive lines in football, Denver, while I don't think they have the namesake talent as those two teams, they clearly have the production was absolutely equivalent. Again, this is the top 3 offensive line in football, both passing and run blocking. And even though they didn't have a great running game, you can go look at the tape and you can go look at the numbers. It was almost entirely due to the running backs themselves. Denver's O-line got great push, created separation, and I think they were number 2 in yards before contact in terms of what an offensive line generates. And they showed the numbers of what a league average running back would do versus what Javonte, who really like Javonte. It's unfortunate. He tore his ACL post his rookie season and was never the same player, but he just was not a good player last year. And so if they upgrade at the running back position, the offensive line is there. Receiver, Troy Franklin in his second year. We saw what Marvin Mims was doing. Cortland had another really good year. Defensively, this is already a top 5 defense. They bring in Hufanga. They bring in Greenlaw. Like, all the things that people are attempting to tear down on Denver, and Nick Wright specifically, who I'm going to be really clear here. Nick only doesn't like Denver, and I will stand on this. And again, I caught him in a lie. We're going to post it later. As a Chief, and I get it. I don't like the Chiefs. I'm a Chiefs hater. Just is what it is. When you root for a team inside the division, you become a hater of the other teams. Denver was by far and away the most successful team in the AFC West during his lifetime. I know these last 5 to 6 years with Mahomes, he's like to totally change history and all that good stuff. By far the most successful team in the AFC West. And that shows in his takes when he's just overtly negative about them and just overtly wants to ignore the fact. And let's look at the other teams that they're playing. Denver's road schedule is better this year than last year. And in division, the Raiders, I get it. I like the Geno Smith trade. I think he is obviously better than what they had last year at quarterback. I don't think Geno is better than Bo right now. Herbert and Mahomes obviously are, but I think overall talent-wise, I think Denver has better defense than both Kansas City and the Chargers. I think Denver has a better offensive line than both Kansas City and the Chargers. And as far as head coach, no, Sean Payton doesn't have the accomplishments of Andy Reid that he's compiled while he's in Kansas City, but I think he is, as terms of just being a play caller, I think he's just as good as anybody. I think Vance Joseph as a defensive coordinator is just as good as anybody. I think Payton and Joseph together, besides exactly Reid and Spagnuolo, I think that's the best coaching combination in terms of offensive coordinator, head coach, and defensive coordinator. So Denver's 9.5. I'm smashing the over again. I think the O-line is still going to be great. I think the receivers are going to be even better. I think they're going to draft running back, address that. Tight end, they got better with Ingram. I think they still might potentially get another tight end in the draft. This defense, I think, has a really, really good chance to be the best defense in football. I understand there's some injury concerns, but what Greenlaw and Hufanga, if they play 15 of the 17 games, I think this is going to be the best defense in football. You have the defensive player of the year in Surtain. Yeah, everything's looking up, man. So let's just not lie. Like, it's really simple. Let's just not lie. Is that so hard to do? When we come back, the baseball team that I believe is just above the power rankings. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily. And we are back. It's a wonderful Thursday morning. So, standings in baseball are always weird to me because, when you play by far the most games of any professional sport, 162, it's really hard to decipher when are we going to start taking your record seriously. Now, some teams, like in all sports, we just know kind of off the rip aren't that good. We just know this. They're not that good. They're not going to be that good. So when they get off to slow starts, we don't expect much as far as them rebounding. The Rockies are 3-15. They're going to be the worst team in Major League Baseball, and no one is really that shocked, nor is anyone really expecting them to make some kind of huge comeback and turn into a potential playoff team or even just a winning record team or, hell, even get to 500. Right, so they're 3-15. We're not really expecting a whole lot from them. Then there's the teams who get off to amazing starts, and we're not quite sure how to feel about it. The Giants are in this camp. The Giants are 13-5. Even optimistic Giant fans probably thought this was a slightly above 500 team, if we're being like the most optimistic. Again, they have a great road record, which is really impressive. They're 9-3 on the road. That's really impressive. Then there's teams who we know are really good. They get off to a great start. We're like, oh, are they even better than we think? That's the San Diego Padres. They're 15-4. 12-1 at home. Tatis killing the ball. Pitching staff on fire. Looks like potentially the best team in baseball. Even the fabled power rankings. They're at the top. They're at the top. And they should be. If you just want to go pure power rankings, they should be at the top. Then there's the teams who we all kind of know. When you have these all-time dominant teams, the Warriors in the NBA when they had Durant, no one really knew their regular season record. Hell, the only regular season record we know during that era is the 73-9 team, and that's arguably more infamous than anything because they're the team that lost 3-1 in the finals. I don't know their regular season win total the years they had Durant. I don't even remember the regular season win total the year they came back 3-1 against OKC. We just knew that even though Houston had great records, even though the Trailblazers with Dame and CJ were putting up some wins and putting up some numbers, even though there was these other teams in the West who were really good, we knew at the end of the day, the best team in the NBA and the team that was going to represent the West in the finals and the team that was probably going to win the finals were Steph, Clay, Draymond, and Durant. They were above the power rankings. They were above the standings. Because even if they just got into the playoffs, we understood what was going to happen. Sometimes you have players that are above it. LeBron, during that second stint in Cleveland, was so great that when he made all those straight finals, again, I don't know what the Cavs' regular season record was any of those particular years. None of them are standout years. There was no 60-win teams that you knew once LeBron got into the playoffs, it was over. He was going to do LeBron James stuff. He was going to be amazing, and he was going to get to the NBA Finals. That simple. He was above the standings. The Dodgers, and they're 14-6, really good record, but they're currently third in the NL West. Would be a wild card team if the playoffs started today. They're above it. They're just simply above it. And look, a lot of this stuff fixes itself because obviously with a team like, there's a reason why the NL West has 4 teams with incredible records is because the Rockies have the worst record in baseball and they stink. And so when you have teams, it's like in the NFL, there were 10 teams last year that were 5 wins or fewer, and that's why we had a surplus of 9, 10-win teams. There were so many bad teams that it elevated the record of the other teams. I brought this up a little bit yesterday when I discussed that the reason why we have 3 60-win teams and the Thunder 68 wins and the Cavs at 64, but why they don't feel like all-time teams is because they did a lot of beating up on really low-quality teams, and those records are going to get inflated as a result. But does anybody, if you ask them today, right hand over your heart, other hand up to God, do you think the Padres are better than the Dodgers? Do you think the Giants are better than the Dodgers? Do you think the Mets, who are also off to a great start and leading the NL East, do you think they're better than the Dodgers? Again, the Dodgers have been doing this with still only half of Shohei Ohtani, who will return to pitching later this year. I brought this up on 90 Feet. I hope he returns to pitching. I know there's a lot more conversation about him just being an offensive player. And while I understand it, I'm also selfish for the sport. Same reason why I want to see Travis Hunter play both ways. I might be scared if it was my team, but I think it's going to be great for the sport if he does it. Clayton Kershaw is not even back yet, and I understand Kershaw is no longer, obviously, is years removed from being the guy he once was, but still being an extra arm, your extra arm being Clayton Kershaw. Like, you still have Betts, Freeman, Ohtani, Teoscar Hernandez. Like, what are we doing here? I get it. Padres, congratulations. And it's, excuse me, Vegas doesn't give a fuck about your feelings. Vegas wants to make money, and they are literally the best in the world at it. The odds to win the NL West, despite the start the Giants are off to, despite the start the Padres are off to. Padres started with a 3% chance to win the NL West. Started the season. It's moved with this amazing start to a whole 4%. And Vegas doesn't care about your fandom. Vegas doesn't care about your feelings. Vegas just cares about money. And they have them as a 4% chance to win that division. Because Vegas knows what the Dodgers are doing, the team the Dodgers have, they're just better than everybody. Have your great regular season. Have your great start to a regular season. Have your great players. The Padres got them. The Giants have to a great start. Doesn't matter. They're not better than the Dodgers. So the Dodgers are in that they're above the standings. The way the Warriors with Durant were above the standings. The way LeBron in the East was above the standings. You just knew him simply being there, that team, the way they were constructed. By the time the playoffs started, they weren't losing. They were the team to beat. And again, it's not like the Dodgers have a bad record. But the Padres are off to an amazing start. Giants off to an amazing start. Mets are off to a great start. This is the Dodgers World Series to lose. 10 million%. When we come back, we are going to be breaking down my quote-unquote controversial NBA Finals pick. Breaking down that series, how I think it's going to go. Wolves, Bucks. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily. And we are back to start hour 2. If you're just a podcast-only listener, it probably sounds weird. We don't ever have 2 full hours. But as we record this in the morning, we obviously start here at 4:30. We end around 6. So let's get started. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody for tuning in today. I have made a probably going to be unpopular pick for the NBA Finals, which is I have Bucks and Timberwolves as my representatives. I've talked multiple times about why I don't think OKC is the dominant team, even though they are a 68-win team, and how SGA is going to be handled in the playoffs. I think he'll be really good, but I do think guys like that historically have struggled to do some ref manipulating or whatever you want to call it, and how I believe the Celtics, even though they should be the favorite, I've seen the Bucks when they were the favorite and it didn't work out when they were defending champions. I saw the Nuggets when they were the defending champs, and they were the overwhelming favorites and it didn't work out. So I don't think it's impossible for Boston to not win this title, especially the way they play, with it being so volatile considering the amount of three-point shots they take, and they could just have a bad stretch shooting and it all goes to hell. That being said, why I feel so good about these two teams, I think there is an element of not super high expectations, and this is going to sound a little corny to start. Like, I don't think anyone's expecting either the Timberwolves or the Bucks to make it. A lot of people will tell you they're not going to make it out of the first round. A lot of people are going to have the Lakers winning the first round series against the Timberwolves, and a lot of people are going to have the Clippers. I'm sorry, not the Clippers. A lot of people are going to have the Pacers over the Bucks. But if you were to ask me, and I think this matters, and maybe this is the little bit of old school in me at a whole 30 years old. Will said something to me about a week ago or 2 weeks ago now that has just really stuck with me, which is this is the only era of NBA players where we're allowing someone to be the best player in the sport and they don't have to play defense. Jokic is considered by most, even myself, to be the best player in the NBA. He is not a good defender, but we just don't care. Luka is another guy who's considered by a lot of people to be one of the, if not the best player in the NBA, has never played defense. People don't care. SGA is a good defender. I think I'm not going to say he's a great defender. I think he's good. I think OKC as a whole is really good, but I don't think he's a great defender by any means. The two guys who I could make the best argument, Tatum is also another guy who is a great offensive player and a good defender. The two guys who are in this top 5, 6, 7 range that I could truly argue are great on both sides of the ball are Giannis and Ant. They're the only two guys who I feel like in that high upper echelon of players, they are truly the two guys who are A's on offense, 8A plus on offense, and 8A plus on defense. And remember, Ant swept the Nuggets. Didn't just beat them. Didn't just barely get by. So he has been dominant before in the playoffs. He is a guy who is athleticism is reminiscent of prime Dwayne Wade. For all you people that love comparing James Harden to Dwayne Wade, and I hate that conversation, I think it's extremely disrespectful to D. Wade, who's one of the greatest players I've ever seen. Ant, athletically and stylistically, has a lot of D. Wade in him. He also added a three-point shot and led the NBA in three-pointers made this year, shooting almost 40%. So a guy who is prime D. Wade athlete and a all-time shooting season from 3 points. That guy, when you get into the playoffs, I think the style of which he plays, I think the style of which Minnesota plays, and we got to give some credit to Minnesota, Rudy Gobert has been better than any of us want to admit. And I think that is going to be a problem for the Lakers. I know they think they're just going to pick and roll and pick apart Rudy Gobert and go at Rudy because that's been the standard and the norm throughout his playoff career. But Rudy has been playing some really great basketball, both on offense and defense. He's no longer just a liability, or has been playing at least like he's no longer just a liability. He is a multiple-time defensive player of the year. They have multiple defenders to throw at the Lakers. They have more depth than most teams want to give them credit for, especially have more depth than the Lakers. I think Chris Finch is one of the most underrated head coaches in the league. He should be in, when we discuss great head coaches, we got to throw him in there. So I've got great head coach. I have great player at his apex in Ant. I have great defensive players, Gobert, Ant, Walker. I've got veteran leadership to help slow down when the time is, if the time we feel like is going to be a little too big for Ant. I've got Mike Conley at the point who can slow it down. He's been there. He's seen everything. Great head coach, great star player, great depth, great roles, great defense. I can shoot threes. I can be in the interior. The Timberwolves, at their apex, can do everything. Can literally do everything. Now, again, Ant doesn't have the resume yet because Ant hasn't won a title yet. But look at the current state of the NBA. Everyone's getting their first titles. The great players. Giannis got his first title. Then Jokic got his first title. Tatum got his first title. All these guys, because we're not in the era of LeBron, Jordan, Kobe, Shaq, Duncan, who are guys stacking up 3, 4, 5 titles, or Steph when he had KD and they're winning back-to-back. And I truly believe is up next. I think they have the coaching. I think they have the offense. I think they have the defense. And then Giannis, I just think is a runaway freight train. And we've just gone, and I love Tony, so I'm not trying to throw him under the bus here. But Tony said something the other day where he said Giannis being great, we're at a point where Giannis being great doesn't actually matter or impact the games. I don't think that's true. Now, I think Giannis has been in a slump. I think he's been, obviously, the last couple of years, he has continued to put up great numbers, but it hasn't led to winning. And so a lot of the opinions of Giannis we've swung way too far in the pendulum. We were ready to crown him greatest player, one of the greatest players ever. He is going to head to the Mount Rushmore. He's going to be an all-time great after his first title, 50-point game against the Suns. And we probably we all saw the way that it could work out, and I think we just automatically put him there, which is probably too soon. But I also believe that we've now gone the other way too much, which is, Giannis isn't impactful, even though he's literally putting up numbers we've never seen before. He is playing in a way we've never seen an NBA athlete do. He is both dominant offensively, defensively, 30-plus points a game. He's getting you 10-plus rebounds. He can get you 5-6 assists. He can get you multiple blocks. He can play like the defensive player of the year. He can play like the MVP of the league. I don't think the Bucks are a really great team. I'm not sure if I would call them even a really good team. My opinion of the Bucks is solely based on, I think we have just undersold who Giannis Antetokounmpo is, and I think he is going to show us. And Giannis, to his credit, when he first got in the postseason, it was the wall that Miami built, and he couldn't get past that. Then he finally gets past that. He makes that title run. In the last couple years, it's been some of really unfortunate injury concerns. Obviously with Drew Holiday, who got hurt. Chris Middleton got hurt. Portis has been hurt. And now even this year, Dame with the blood clot issue, it's been a lot of just unfortunate injuries. And I don't think any of it's going to matter. I think Giannis is going to run through the playoffs on the Eastern side of things. And I think he's going to put himself back in the finals, and he is going to reestablish himself. I don't think he's left this spot. I think Giannis has been the best player in the East the last 3 to 4 years. Maybe even 5 years if you want to go all the way back. But he's going to firmly reestablish himself because Tatum is coming for his spot. There's no debating that. Tatum is coming for his spot as the best player in the East. I think he is going to reestablish that. He is going to get back there and going to make this finals run. So Timberwolves Bucks is my NBA final prediction. And with that being said, when you get into a finals matchup, Timberwolves Bucks, I think Giannis, again, Gobert is going to be there to meet him at the rim. The Timberwolves have multiple defensive guys who are going to be able to kind of slack off to help contain Giannis, because the Bucks don't have a bunch of dominant offensive players or a bunch of guys who you have to truly be worried about on a consistent basis. I think Ant is going to be able to get pretty much whatever he wants. But again, this is kind of put all my eggs in one basket. Maybe this is too much of a fanish take. I think Giannis gets another one. I think Ant is really close, and I think Ant is going to get one here pretty soon in his future. But I think Giannis is going to, what we've seen from him the last month of basketball. Now, my one caveat, Doc Rivers is your head coach. That's tough. That's tough. Do I like Doc Rivers versus Chris Finch in the finals? No. I would much rather have Chris Finch for Minnesota. Minnesota, by all accounts, should win my hypothetical finals. But there's just something that's telling me Giannis is going to go on one of those runs, man. Those LeBron second stint in Cleveland runs. That Dirk in Miami. That Steph, the very first title. Giannis is going to show why he's one of the best players to ever play the game of basketball. So, my NBA Finals prediction, Bucks-Wolves. I have Bucks, and I'm going to say, why not? Bucks in 7. Giannis gets his second 50-point Game 7 closeout. This is HardFoul Radio. We will be back momentarily. And we are back to close it out here. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody for joining me today, as always. So, two things I want to close out here. A, and I was going to sound contradictory to what I've said earlier this week, we got to stop recycling, especially NBA head coaches. Like, we just got to stop this. Guys who are just continuing to get multiple opportunities because they have the base qualification of, I have coached in the NBA before. If you ever remember going for like your first job and it was, experience needed, but it was like a starter position, you go apply at McDonald's or Jack in the Box, and they went, experience as a fast food employee. Okay, well, how did I get the experience if nobody will hire me brand new? And it almost feels like you were just blocked out of some of these jobs because they wanted someone with experience. But how do you get that experience? And with the Budenholzer firing and multiple other firings expected, again, the Pelicans, there's conflicting reports on if they're going to keep Willie Green or if they don't. That, Mike Brown is in consideration to be hired by it. Mike D'Antoni's name is getting thrown out there again, as it does every couple of years. We got to stop just doing these retrains of head coaches. Now, specifically head coaches who are not proven commodities, meaning a little bit of winning here or there. All right, whatever. Michael Malone, I think, is in a different position. Michael Malone is a championship-winning head coach and a recent championship-winning head coach. This isn't like hiring, a guy who won a title 15, 20 years ago. He is a recent championship-winning NBA head coach. If you're not Michael Malone exactly, and I do like Taylor Jenkins, I think he is a good head coach, but we just got to get past this point of we're just retreading and rehiring the same handful of coaches over and over again. Like, Mike Budenholzer doesn't need another job right now if he's in consideration for one. Mike Brown, who was just let go by the Kings, who, yes, the Kings were good, not great, just traded away De'Aaron Fox, are probably going to, Sabonis and DeRozan are contemplating their future with the franchise. We just got to stop this NBA head coach retrain or retread. There's a bunch of things the NBA could do better. This is one of them. Malone's in a different bracket. Malone has a recent NBA title, has worked with the best player in the NBA, has done a lot recently where I don't think he should get the same knock on him, but it does not take away the fact that a lot of these coaches are just being rehired, retread, reused. We don't need to keep doing this, NBA. We can be better. Be better than just your last coach who was just fired. Please and thank you, your fans. Lastly here for closing statement. So Rich Paul went on Pat McAfee's show and was basically saying, there's really no big threes. You think there's big threes, but there's really no big threes. And he used it in this weird way where, and Rich Paul knows basketball. Rich Paul's been around the game, and obviously him and LeBron and what they do at Clutch Sports, amazing, amazing, amazing. But this is just a weird comment, in my opinion, to downplay Chris Bosh, who at the time was probably one of the 10 best players in the NBA, just came off a season in Toronto where he was an all-star, averaging 24 points a game, led them to the playoffs. And then, yes, he took the third role or the third superstar role in Miami because he was playing with LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. Fun fact, everybody playing in the NBA at that time besides exactly Kobe Bryant would have also taken the third role because LeBron and D Wade were probably players 2 and 3 or 1 and 3, depending on how you want to do it, in the NBA at that time. So yes, Chris Bosh took a backseat. That did not make it any less of a quote-unquote super team, big three, and it felt weird because it just felt like a way to actually, what he did in Miami was even more impressive because he only had one superstar with him in Dwayne Wade, and D Wade's body started to fail him after a year and a half. Chris Bosh was a superstar. They might have played stylistically in a way that he was no longer a superstar, but Chris Bosh was a superstar. let's not diminish who Chris Bosh was in that moment. It's not necessary. There's no need to really revisionist history it or to go back and try to, again, this is the one thing that I think is true about LeBron and the air around LeBron is, and I get it, he's probably frustrated because Nike did a hell of a campaign when it came to Jordan. And the media did a hell of a campaign when it came to Jordan, where they did it on such an overwhelming scale. Mike didn't really have to talk that much. There were so many people in the media and Nike who talked for him and put him in this untouchableness of the Air Jordan and the GOAT and the greatest this and the greatest that. So if you're LeBron, you almost feel like, well, I have to combat that if I really feel like I want that number one spot. And that's something that you're just not going to be able to do naturally because Nike didn't do it naturally. The sports media people of that era didn't do it naturally. Jordan was gifted this air of invincibility and this air of could do no wrong and all these other things that LeBron's just not going to have. And so LeBron going and having to do his own media tour, I get it. It just feels disingenuous because they were both disingenuous. But we're used to, as regular people and fans, we're used to the disingenuous by big media, big companies. That just kind of comes with the territory. If you see a commercial, if you were to see a Nike commercial of LeBron calling him the greatest ever, that would feel natural if you saw that with his shoe commercial. We saw that with Jordan. We saw the greatest ever. We saw the shoes. We saw the commercials. We saw the GOAT. All that stuff feels natural because that's how we're used to taking it in. When you try to do that yourself, it feels unnatural. And that's some of what Rich Paul was saying feels like. And again, let's just not diminish Chris Bosh. It's the easiest thing in the world. You can up what someone does and you can big up what someone does without having to tear down someone else. So yes, Chris Bosh was a great player. Chris Bosh was an all-star. Chris Bosh was one of the best players in the East, was one of the best players in the league, had taken Toronto to the playoffs, was averaging 24 a game, and then he took the third role because, again, LeBron and D. Wade were two of the three best players in the NBA at that time. But that was a super team. That was a big three. We don't need the revisionist history. That's like saying, now I said it in real time, but that's like saying the Warriors were not a bunch of superstars. Steph was the only superstar. Clay and Draymond were not. Now, I said in real time Clay and Draymond weren't superstars, and they were there for the ride, which still stand on, still believe, but that team had 4 Hall of Famers. That's a super team. The Miami Heat had 3 Hall of Famers. That's a super team. Now, in his defense, if you really want to say the revisionist history that works in LeBron's favor is Eric Spoelstra, while we now consider him a great head coach, no one did in real time. Everyone kind of just waited for him to get fired if he couldn't figure it out. There was multiple times during that first season they've discussed that there was a potential for him to get fired, and part of Pat Riley's claim to fame is he said, no, this is my guy, this is who we're sticking with. But let's not revisionist history, Chris Bosh, please. It's unnecessary. Leave Chris alone. With that being said, appreciate everybody, as always, for checking in today. We are back tomorrow. Excuse me. Shout out Caleb Sweats for the follow. And we will see you guys tomorrow.